hope that there are lots of people seeing me now because I'm talking to a green lamp right now. So, dear audience, I hope you're there while I am interacting with AI in action. I'm an industrial designer. My name is Vladimir Pirozhkov, and I'll tell you about how we contemplate the future. When I was 20 years old, I worked abroad, and then I returned to Russia after a couple of decades, and I realized that the goal is the same, which is global competitiveness of your business. And you always must be ahead of everyone else. That's the only way to do something. If you're worse than everybody else, you will not get very far. If you want to be better than the others, you understand how much resources you have for that, to be better. So when I first began doing industrial design in Russia, I wanted to understand what is Russia in a global GDP structure and how much Russia spends on the new stuff. Because the things that I do is new stuff, something that was never before. Here's a pie chart, and in the center, this big red blob is the US. With $21.43 trillion of global GDP, which is 24%, almost 24.5% of global GDP. Where's Russia there? So you see there is this little triangle with 1.7. There's this triangle with 1.7 trillion GDP. That's about 2% of global GDP. That is Russia. That's not a lot. So with those 2% of global GDP, Russia has to lead, somewhat lead, because we want to lead, don't we? And the leader who has the newest stuff, R&D, like in the class at school, you go, you get in the morning to school and you have the newest iPhone and you are the coolest kid in class. But you need to invest to buy that new iPhone. And if we look at the investment into R&D in different countries globally, let's see. Here is the breakdown: 476 billion the US, and you see the following: China. Russia spends 39.5 at the left upper side, $39.8 billion for R&D invested in Russia in 2019. We don't have that much money, but somehow we want to keep on moving and leading. So how do we retain leadership in situation of constrained resources? Actually, there is a formula, which is a delta between modernization versus innovation. Today we're speaking about AI, but still I have to tell you about this, because this is directly related to AI and its progress. So modernization is making things more complex over time. You see complexity at the y-axis and time on the x-axis. And here's a simple example. A Swiss Army knife, a good New Year's gift to a guy or even a girl, but we will not give it to you. You want to give this one. It's much more awesomous, and it's much more desirable. So that actually helps you to understand the situation. So we need to modernize it up to the point of absurdity, and that's not progress. But same thing is happening: education, accounting, bureaucracy, public services, construction. We are making things overly complex. So there are perfect parameters for optimal complexity. For a knife, for example, the parameter of the optimal complexity is the size of human palm. So if the knife does not fit into the palm, it's pretty much too much. Let me show you the illustration of the sewing machine. The first Singer sewing machine looked like this. Then in the middle, that's the modernized of the first model of Singer machine. This is a perfect version. Then we began updating it, adding options, Wi-Fi control, heating of the chair, you name it. Turns out the perfect machine was created 100 years ago. All of the updates were just getting more and more options. Same thing happened to vehicles, to cars, to planes, etc. So innovation is moving to the next level. Innovation is a level up, and that's relatively non-expensive, because if there is an idea of something new, that means that there's a very easy way to arrive from the very easy way to go from the thimble, tailor's thimble, to a sewing machine. You can even add Wi-Fi to the thimble. It will still remain a thimble, just Wi-Fi equipped. So here is innovation, something that will be happening to the intelligence that is getting artificial. So you see this big red question mark. After the sewing machine, we get the 3D printer, and after the 3D printer, we get some new materials that the printer is using. So a few words about the trends of the future, and then we'll speak more succinctly about the AI. So, let's see what's happening now in order to find out what's going to be happening next. According to the forecast, the average temperature, global temperatures in the world will grow by 1.5 or even 2 degrees by 2050 because of the glaciers of Arctica and Antarctica will be melting. The level of the global ocean will go up, and many international capitals will delve underwater. So by the mid of the 21st century, there will be up to 330 new climate refugees that will lead to unforeseeable social tensions and conflicts. Potable water. That will be much more serious issues than oil or natural resources, because most of the population in the world will not have access to drinkable potable water. The population of the world will reach 9.7 billion people. About 68% of global population will be living in cities, and many of them will not be wealthy and maybe will be living in slums. By 2050, there will be 2.5 billions more of city dwellers, mostly in Africa and Asia. Wealth will transition into the West. Chinese yuan will probably be the major international currency by 2050. The largest bank in terms of assets is in China. Innovation is coming from Asia, where creativity is surprisingly bounded, including the limitations on the internet use. Africa and Afghanistan will be the regions where cyber currency will be more common. Mostly in these countries, sometimes cybersecurity is actually very widespread. Generation Z cares about ecology. For them, climate change is becoming the real thing. For example, my daughter. Rejection of plastics, waste management, green energy, lean resource preservation is not just fashionable slogan to them. For them, that's the condition for survival. For my generation X, that was more a slogan for them. Those are the life conditions. Global warming can lead to the decrease of the wheat harvests, corn harvests by 10%, while the need for foods will increase by 50% compared to today, due to the population growth. The problems of nutrition and global food supply chain will be solved through artificial projects. There's already chicken nuggets that are made of artificial meat. Here's the photo of me, and the bicycle is not a real bicycle. This is the new sales system. This is AR. In a French store, when there could be any item standing next to it, and you will see how dashing you look next to it. Cyber retail and neuromarketing is up and coming. If you liked something in a window of a shop, it's reflected in a device, by a device in the retina of your eye, and next block you just face this van going up right to you with the pair of shoes that you want to buy. Quantum phone is made. The quality of telecom is just as good no matter what's the weather conditions, etc. Very soon we shall say goodbye to traditional data transmission technologies, including iPhone. Mobility, 3D transportation. Over 80 companies globally are actively developing the aerial personal mobile transportation, while they develop the norms of certifications and mobility regulations. In Japan, they're going to legalize this sort of flying vehicles up to 2030. There are also new transportation systems, new physical principles. This is the Ion plane created in MIT, ion-based plane. This plane doesn't have any moving parts, and still it's able to fly, based on a completely different physical principle. Another issue is energy transmission over distance, like wireless charging. This is one of the examples. But it's very primitive compared to what we have and can have. There are also interactive avatars. Here are the photos of two TV casters in China, one real and another is a 3D model, broadcasting 24/7. No need to go anywhere. These are virtual characters, so we shall be able to digitize celebrities or politicians. We will not even know that those people died. They will still be on air. Another interesting thing is the IoT. We arrive to the IoT that will not only be actively used in civic life, but also in military structures. So all of the resources for a particular task must be a part of one information network so that they exchange the data. Naturally, that's digital city or some digital environment or Sberbank. In the war of the future, the winner will be not only the nation with the best tank or the most powerful fighting jet, but those who will be able to manage the complex of those maybe not very advanced military machines. And this is directly tied to civic infrastructure and its life cycle, the way it's created and used. That leads us to the digitalization of cities and regions and entire countries, not to mention endless and boundless additive implants. Now we can print literally almost any material and transfer it into any sort of object, so customization will be total in the future. Smart materials are replacing the 3D printers that replaced the sewing machines. If we recall Terminator 2, the liquid robot, these are the materials that will be embalming us, for example, when we feel cold. The material is available and it's being tested now in China. Also, 3D printers help us to work, to develop new forms of life. Bioprinting. On the left, you can see a robot. That is a robot that was printed on a bioprinter, and this robot can move in liquid environment. On the right, you can see the character from the Avatar movie flying on a dragon. And I believe that pretty soon we shall be able to produce biological systems to manage and use. Self-reproduction of robots is something that is actively happening, and that will be the transhuman thing, when people will begin swapping their body parts onto certain prosthetics and technologies. And then there will be combination of human beings and robotics, something that we've seen in the movie called Elysium or Robocop. And then we'll get these hybrids. Another trend is individualism or loneliness. It's up and coming. And of course, total surveillance. Individualism, and as a result, the increased level of security. Let me swap a few slides, but we're talking about the issues of transhumanity. Humanity begins producing cyber organisms, and that leads us to a human being 2.0. That's the process of optimization of life. And in the end, we'll arrive to this human being 2.0. China has launched the national plan for AI development. The idea is to create the core for production and development, and they're going to invest $141 billion by 2030, which is $12 billion a year. Going back to the idea of progress and complexity, today's development looks like this. This is where we are. if we create AI, things will be accelerating. Here's a good example. The first device on the left is made and constructed by a human being. It included 18 technological cycles. Second device, one technological cycle that's been bred in a printer based on bionic design principles. And the third device is a device that's been optimized, machine optimized. It's been completely optimized by an algorithm. Let's say that this is the embryonic state of AI. If the device on the left is included in our planes and trains, the device on the right is the way the robots see a technological world. So we can easily transfer it into the human plane. Here's the human on the left, then human plus computer, and then we get just a computer, optimized as a device. It will not entirely look like a human, and it might have more limbs, not necessarily two. So here's the hypothesis of the future. Humanity will create living beings 2.0 that will replace human beings at the top of the food chain, and that will happen by 2050. These new beings will be more competitive in terms of evolutionary development, and they will be on top of the food chain on our planet. The infrastructure that they create will be not comprehensible or immeasurable by human beings, and they will pretty much decide the fates of humanity. So, this will not be happening through the evolution of living beings, but that will be solved by the some external force, which is cyber. So when we make mistakes, we need progress. That's why we're doing it. That's why we thought about not the development of AI, but the development of those human beings that will be working with AI. Via edutainment, through different toys and cartoons that children love. Jobs of the future. Manager of the pack flight, psychologist of the plastic surgery, designer of virtual worlds, molecular dietologist, consultant for healthy retirement, genome architect, augmented reality designer. Those new jobs are followed by the lack of educational institutions and professors who can teach that. And as Mr. Graf said, why don't we have experts? Because the expert should have three qualities that exclude one another. First is creativity and ability to be visionary. Those people are not good with systematic thinking. And the third quality is combination of systematic thinking and creativity. And what also needs to be there is execution. And AI, of course, will help us. Bad future does not need effort in the present. It's hard to build the new chain. We need dreamers. We need those who does not turn back. They will lead us into the future. Thank you.